Hello everyone. Let's talk of a literary term very famous in the domain of tragedy. This is a Greek term, in fact. The spelling is Catharsis. The correct pronunciation that we must know of this particular term in British English. See, as we know that there is no th sound as we have in Hindi, thali. There is no th sound in English. So th is generally pronounced as t or t or th. And as you know, when r comes somewhere in the last, it is not pronounced as well. But that r is pronounced very clearly in American English. And as you know, as we have o or a sound in English, that is generally pronounced as a sound in American. So the British pronunciation that we have here of this term Catharsis is catharsis. Catharsis. No r is there, no th is there or th is there. Catharsis. Catharsis. When you follow American pronunciation, it will be catharsis. Catharsis. It is not catharsis, not, or catharsis, no. Catharsis. Catharsis. In British, we have catharsis. Catharsis. Okay. I also had to practice before recording it. Okay. So catharsis is a Greek term used by Aristotle in chapter 6. Remember it, chapter 6 of Poetics. Actually, this is the chapter where he clearly used the term. He talks of catharsis in many other chapters as well, but here he gives that term, and I think this is the only one time when he talks of this particular term. Okay, and as you know, chapter 6 of Poetics. Poetics is what? A treatise written on literary criticism by Aristotle. The chapter 6 of Poetics talks of tragedy. There, Aristotle clearly defines tragedy. And while comprehending his definition, you will have to be acquainted with some Greek terms. My main focus of this particular recording is to make you remember some Greek terms. They are, I think, 6 to 8, 1, 9, 1, 10. 10 terms are there. And they are generally, asked in several examinations, and that is why don't think that you should remember just English counterpart. You will have to remember Greek terms as well. They are not that much difficult. See, While talking of that famous definition of tragedy as it is given in chapter 6 of Poetics, he defines tragedy is, and I quote, an imitation, for which he gives the term mimesis, as it was used by Plato as well. Plato was actually the term given by, mimesis was the term actually given by Plato. But here he, redefines mimesis in a different way. An imitation, that is mimesis, an imitation of an action that is serious. So tragedy is about serious things, and that is why the correct translation of tragedy should be Gambhir, not Trasadi. Tragedy is not always full of tragedy, as we generally translate it into Hindi as tragedy. We say comedy as comedy and say tragedy as tragedy. So the exact counterpart, or you can say exact analog of this term tragedy in Hindi is Gambhir. So tragedy is an imitation of an action that is serious, complete. See, that must be complete, and that complete talks of unity. While talking of complete, he talks of unity, how it should be of one day and one kind of action. Unity of action means it should not be mixed, as we have tragicomedy in later writings. So an action that is serious, complete, so it must have unity. And when we talk of unity, there we have two unities only, as talked of by Aristotle, that is unity of time and unity of action. He does not talk of unity of place. Actually, it was later added by French writers, French dramatists. Okay, so tragedy is an imitation of an action that is serious, complete, and of a certain magnitude. Certain magnitude. Triple dot means something is being left here. Though pity and fear affecting the proper purgation, and that purgation is catharsis of these emotions. So how the tragedy should function? It should create pity and fear among the audience and ultimately leading them to catharsis, to purgation. So now the question comes, what this purgation is all about. See, while talking of purgation, we should remember the famous work by Dante, the Italian poet. What for is he famous? The Divine Comedy. The Divine Comedy is divided into three parts. The first one is Inferno, that is the description of hell, and then Purgatorio, the second one, And then finally the third one, that is paradiso, that talks of heaven or paradise. Okay, so purgatorio is the place where the people had to confront several difficulties and sufferings for making them able to go in paradiso, to go in paradise. So purgation is actually the suffering which makes us purified. So when we talk of this term catharsis, as it is given in M.H. Abraham's literary terms, what is written clearly here? It signifies purgation or purification. Actually, both are two different terms. Purification comes after purgation. So there is a debate on its translation, whether it should be purgation or purification, or it should be both. So it signifies purgation or purification or both is much disputed, means much debated. The critics are not unanimous on this, whether it should be translated as purgation or purification, or it should be understood as purification and purgation both. On two terms, however, many commentators agree. What are those two terms? Means because all are agree on those terms, so we must be aware of those things being talked of catharsis. Aristotle, in the first place, sets out to account for the undeniable, means that cannot be denied, though remarkable. So obviously remarkable things are not very easily deniable. Fact. What is that fact? That many tragic representations of suffering and defeat leave an audience feeling not depressed but relieved or even exalted. Focus on it. What do they say? What do the critics or the commentators say? That many tragic representations of suffering and defeat leave an audience feeling not depressed but relieved or even exalted. See, for understanding this, we can talk of Macbeth, one of the four most famous tragedies of Shakespeare, along with King Lear, Othello, and Hamlet. There we perceive an ambitious man, Macbeth, who has a strong desire of becoming king, and on working that desire, three witches made a prophecy that ultimately led him killing his own king Duncan. When we perceive the personality of Macbeth, he is a poet by his heart, means he has emotion, he is a good man. Only one fatal flaw that he has is his ambition. And that fatal flaw, as it is understood, it leads to death. The flaw that leads to death. We see how a person, a very good person, only having one fatal flaw. Initially, we see how he ascends the throne, how he becomes the king. But with becoming king, his suffering also gets started. And we see how his wife, Lady Macbeth, is suffering with somnambulism, and how she is becoming mad by and by, and at last dies as well. And ultimately we see the defeat and death of that protagonist. The Macbeth who was known for his victory in the beginning of the drama, in Act 1, we see how he falls and laid on the ground as a corpse. So here, when we see that tragic representation, when we see the suffering and defeat of that protagonist, how a good person like Macbeth, with the passage of time, proved to be more cruel while murdering all others, being involved in the conspiracy against him. When we see his suffering, when we see the suffering of Lady Macbeth, when we see the defeat of Macbeth, we of course don't feel depressed, but relieved. On the moral ground, as we say, he is getting the fruit of what he has done. As there is a famous idiom as well, as you sow, S-O-W, as you sow, comma, so shall you reap, R-E-A-P. In Hindi, बोया पेड़ बबूल का आम कहाते होए. So, while comprehending through that moral ground, we don't feel depressed, we feel relieved. And there is one more ground of